Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host, Tony Cañas, and today, special episode with my fellow long-haired hippie, Sergi Ruiz. By the way, I didn't even ask how to pronounce it. Is it Sergi?
Well, I grew up with Spanish-speaking people and English-speaking people, so both pronunciations would be fine. Sergi,
Oh, okay.
Sergi.
Okay, so
Really.
is your actual name Sergio?
No, it's a Sergi. Yeah.
Sergi. Okay.
Yeah.
Sergi Ruiz. This is Tony Cañas and Sergi Ruiz, two long-haired hippies in the insurance slash Insurtech world. And basically, I met Sergi last year at Insurtech Connect, which he remembers and I don't, because Insurtech Connect is a long conference and it's been 6 months and I didn't sleep much. Might have had something to drink before we chatted. And then we ran into each other again at Insurtech Hartford this year in the much bigger, much in the new setting at the Mohegan Sun Casino, which is just a beautiful setting. And we got to chatting, and basically I was asking him how he ended up in Insurtech, because it's a question that I get all the time. Like, hey, I'm an insurance professional. How do I make the move to Insurtech? How do I make myself attractive? So anyway, I would love to have you just kind of tell your career history from back when you were just selling life insurance. How did you end up where you are today as a digital transformation manager for EasySend?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So basically the way it started when I was about 19, 20 years old. Signed up with a life insurance company. They didn't have the best reputation, but they gave opportunities to everybody, which is what I absolutely loved about the company. Basically, they were just like a private life insurance company. They sold insurance products to occupational workers, and basically you just kind of branched out and created your book of business from there, right? So again, and at this point, by the way, I had been looking for life insurance sales jobs. I went to
job by itself is weird.
Yeah, it's very strange. So let me actually back up a little bit. So there was a college fair. Basically, I was going to college while I was looking for this sort of job. Was going to college at Colorado Mesa. I was playing a little bit of football at the time. And was just going into the summer looking for, some way to make money so I can kind of hold myself over for the next semester. So they had a job fair. I saw the company New York Life there, or a couple representatives from there. They offered me an interview. I came in, didn't really hear back from them after that, but I liked the pitch that she gave me. I liked the freedom that it offered. I liked the unlimited potential. So I thought, okay, well, if I'm not going to get this job, let me just go and apply for this job 100 times with a bunch of different life insurance companies. And like I said, the one that I got a call from was a company that they tend to give kind of opportunities to everybody. So I signed up, got licensed, and basically just got to selling. And the funny thing is I was selling life insurance. I started selling around Christmas time. Which is like, you would think if you're an insurance professional, that's not going to be, very fruitful time. But it was, it was such a good 2 months that I decided, you know what, I'm going to actually quit school.
Oh,
and
how? So by the way, you probably don't know this, and a lot of people don't know this, but my first role in insurance, I got licensed by Mass Mutual to sell life, and I was doing that part-time on top of my day job in transportation, and I sold literally zero policies. Like my license expired a year later, I didn't renew it, and I never sold anything. How did you have success so quickly?
Yeah. So it did help that the company that I was working with, and I think this is huge for any insurance professionals. If you are, especially in the beginning stages, make sure you do have a company that is either paying you for the work that you're doing. These companies get paid a lot, or somebody that is supporting you by providing you with resources and leads and, people to go see.
I was getting nothing.
Yeah, that was huge, man. We had leads, what we didn't really have at the time was a strategy for how to kind of expand the business from the leads, right? So really it was just kind of, I'm 19, 20 years old. I don't really know what's going on. Somebody tells me to call these people 6 times a day. So that's basically what I did, right?
Are you offering them term, or are you offering them whole?
So the way it worked was they signed up and the organization that they were associated with provided them with a free accidental insurance policy. It was
Oh,
like
okay, so that was the way in. Okay.
exactly. So you go in, you're like, hey, like we have this policy for you. We just wanted to make sure we grab a beneficiary for you, contingent beneficiary. And if you honestly like kind of going back, creating those leads is not super difficult, right? But it's just when you just get signed up and they're like, all right, go find people to sell. It's just that's not enough support. You're not really getting any sort of direction there, right? So I had leads, and then I also had the added benefit of being one of the only people that spoke Spanish in the office at the time.
Uh-huh.
So the lead pack that I got was a pretty untapped market. So it was like I would sell to this person, and you're Hispanic as well. So once you kind of get into a circle of influence, it becomes pretty natural as long as you're doing the work and knowledgeable in your space. It comes pretty easily, but still there was a lot of persistence to this day, kind of having an understanding. I don't even think I would bother people that much anymore because there was certainly a lot of very angry people. But it worked out. Basically, I got a promotion to a training supervisor very quickly. From there, I got basically a co-general manager position, and kind of had a little bit to do with my age and then the size and tenure of the office and some of the people there. But basically, they after about a year and a half there, they offered me to open up a satellite office in Dallas, Texas. Right. So
And that growth, what was it all based on hitting sales numbers, or was it that you were good at training people or good at mentoring people, or like what led to the growth
yeah,
of that
yeah.
office?
I mean, I don't want to take particular credit for anything. I think what it really came down to was somebody explained to me, hey, you need to have the main thing is have a repeatable system. Because I was so new to the sales space and the insurance space, the system that I knew was the system that everybody wanted it to be on, essentially, right? So it's like calling people 6 times a day, getting 10 referrals from people. Those were quotas at the time, but I also didn't really know that those were not quotas that people were essentially hitting often, right? So it kind of just came to me through my mentor. He just told me, hey, you got to make sure that you create what you're doing in a repeatable fashion, right? So I think just emphasizing on doing all of the right habits while you're training people, because you have success from that, your trainees have success from that, and then you can create kind of a good hierarchy once you do start managing people in training roles, where you can kind of be confident that they're also doing all the right things. So it really does start with a good training culture, and it even started with my upper management really drilling in the this has to be a duplicatable system. So I think that's kind of where the fast growth and like I said, just being so new to the space that you wouldn't think, oh, calling people 6 times a day is ridiculous, I'm just going to do it, right? So yeah, that's kind of what attributed to the really rapid growth.
Okay, so yeah, you grow quickly. Ultimately, like you get promoted twice, and you're only there for 2 years and a little bit. And,
Correct.
and then, how did you end up at the next stop at American Family?
So that was kind of brief. Basically from there, our contract, because we had yearly contracts with this company, so my contract ended. After looking at how much we brought in, we tried to negotiate for higher percentages, which is essentially how you get paid with life insurance. You get paid based on the first year premiums. So we tried to negotiate for higher ownership of the business that we were handling. We didn't really come to an agreement, so I decided to then kind of go off and start my own thing. And at first it was just going to be like, I'm going to just get contracted by all the major companies, all the major carriers, and just kind of go and start selling it on my own, essentially, right? But then I stumbled across this person. She basically offered me a role to sell for American Family insurance branches in the northern part of Colorado. So I would basically go in, I would essentially utilize their book of business. The same thing. We had this system that was written down. There was like a binder with step by step with like, this is how you open it up. This is how you refer to the person. Like basically being able to teach a monkey how to sell life insurance. Like it
Well,
was every detail.
and I think for anybody newer to the industry, I think it's important, or any listener from the carrier side that's never been an agent, I think it's important to know that for some reason, PNC agents are generally not very good at selling life. So very
Right.
often, you end up having one life guy that a bunch of PNC agencies or agents partner with. So if you're
Yeah,
good at selling life, it's pretty easy to get that
exactly.
to be the life go-to. And now you're getting very, very good leads because they're being fed by agents that already have a relationship with that person. That person sees you as an extension of that relationship.
Exactly. Now with the American Family stint, it didn't last super, super long. But with that, that's where I recognize what you can really do as an independent agent, right? So at that point, I kind of branched out a little bit. I actually went to State Farm agents. I went to independent brokers. I went to anybody that I possibly could and just offered them, listen, I know you guys get paid bonuses and incentives that actually are way higher than the actual commissions that you're getting on a yearly basis. Let me keep the commissions and you guys keep the bonuses, basically.
So
And
I am really curious at this point. Is it like corporate Sergi that's showing up? Like at this point, you have short hair and you're showing up wearing a tie.
yeah, exactly. I'm short hair, wearing a tie. Let me see if I can actually find a picture of.
If you do have a picture, send it over. And what
Okay.
I'll do is I'll for a moment I'll flash both corporate Sergi and corporate Tony on the screen. Which every time, and some of my old videos are still very corporate Tony.
Yeah.
And like if I repost them, people go like, "I cannot believe that's you."
Yeah, exactly, man. So I was and here's the thing that kind of, drove me out of that space too is it's a very difficult job. There's times where you get paid, very, very good money. There's definitely a lot of dry spells. If you don't learn how to manage those highs and lows, they definitely get the best of you. And they certainly got the best of me. So what
Well,
you guys are
you were still really young.
yeah, exactly. So, 20, 21 years old, getting
Oh
paid
my
a ton
god.
of money and,
Yeah, like
never really had any experience with it.
I'm self-employed for the last 10 months,
Yeah.
and right, my little recruiting shop did very well from the beginning. And luckily, I'm 40 now, or I was 39 when I went off on my own. So I'm mature enough to know that like keep that money in the business account and then
Exactly.
pay myself a pretty standard salary, because there will be times where nothing's coming in or very little's coming in.
Yeah.
If I had a big party with the big money when it came in, then I'm not going to be able to pay myself the rest of the time, and I would not have known that, or had much less had the discipline and maturity to do that at 21 or 25 or maybe 30.
Yeah.
Yeah, so of course I can only imagine at 21 what a mess that can create.
Exactly, man. I mean, it got to the point where I was like, you know what? I'm making more money than I thought I was going to make with my degree. So I quit college. And I mean, you can kind of guess all the other terrible habits that kind of go with being a 21-year-old and, making more money than they ever thought that they would.
There was I had when I was a middle market underwriter for Liberty. I was in Atlanta, Georgia, and my territory was Mississippi. And I was having dinner or drinks or something with visiting Mississippi with some of my agents out there, and they were very successful. And one of them was telling me the story of how he started selling insurance, in this case, commercial PNC right out of college. And
Mhm.
he's like, is this one guy at Liberty, is he still there? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm pretty new to Liberty. And he tells me a story of how like 20 years before, when he first sold a large commercial lines policy, this guy was the sales manager and literally hand delivered the check, and the kid's like 23, and the Liberty sales manager hands deliver the check for like a $30,000 commission, and literally tells him, you put this straight into savings and don't even think about it.
Dude,
Like,
yeah.
and he's so thankful. 20 years later, he's so thankful about that advice because it kept him out of trouble.
Yeah, it would have for sure. It yeah, but some people kind of go through that and the perfect storm just kind of aligns. you know, right when somebody was about to step in and say something, I'm moving to Dallas. And, right when somebody's about to step in to say something, I'm moving into, doing in the thing on my own. And here's the other thing that you got to consider when you're self-employed as well, especially when you're doing well, is taxes.
So yes, my little recruiting shop, my sister-in-law is my CPA. And
Mhm.
from the very beginning, she said, out of everything that comes in, the first thing you do is you put 30% of it in savings for taxes.
Yep.
I went through my first tax season, and actually, I had saved a little bit more than needed, and I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm so thankful that she gave me that
Yeah.
advice, because I could have easily found myself in the opposite situation where this is my first go around. I made good money last year, and then been in trouble to pay the taxes, right? Because
Yeah, and I hate getting off track, but this is so important
no,
as
no, no,
well.
no,
The
we're
tax
good.
thing. So with the taxes, that's number one. You make good money, you have to pay taxes. And you're right, it's somewhere around like 30% if you're self-employed. Now, this is the more important lesson that I really didn't learn until much later down the road. It's also how you manage your taxes and why it's important to actually pay physical money to your taxes and not try to deduct everything that you possibly can, right?
Interesting. Why is that?
So when it comes to getting some sort of loan, right? So if you want to invest in a property of some sort and you want to use a mortgage to get that property, the way that your income is valuated as somebody who's self-employed is net
Oh,
income, not
I
gross income.
yes,
For
that's very good advice. Yes, if you're very good at deducting everything, you're living well and showing very little actual profit, which is what the bank's going to look
Exactly. Exactly. So
at.
when I was, 22 years old, had a ton of cash and showed up and was like, all right, I'm ready to buy a property. They're like, well, no, you're not. You only make $12,000 a year. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'll show you my check stubs. I'll do this, I'll do that. And they're like, no, 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 no. That's not how it works.
That's
Right.
very
So
interesting. Very interesting.
it's as much as people think they're smart and can kind of go around things. You can go around for the short term. You can keep some cash in your pocket, but once it comes to expanding your investments into money that isn't yours, which is important, that's where it starts to get a little bit convoluted, right? And
Mhm.
I mean, other emergencies can serve the same kind of thing too. If somebody's car breaks down, they have to go get a new car. If you're self-employed, if this is your first year and you deducted everything, well, you're not going to get a very good car, right? So those are things to consider in the first couple years, not even just as an independent agent, but I think as somebody just self-employed in general, right?
Absolutely. So after the two stops at American Family and State Farm, you actually build your own thing, Colorado
Oh
Life.
yeah, yeah. So the State Farm was a part of like the Colorado Life Sales
Oh, okay,
organization.
okay. So
So
okay, so Colorado Life Sales offered that service to State Farm.
yeah, American Family was more of like, you're an employee of us, but yes, you are going to manage the Northern Territory. It was kind of like a test program. I'm not even sure if they still do it or not, but I was like, you know what? I can just do that myself, So I went, and still associated with some of the American Family agents that I was with, just more so you guys are going to hire my company, right? If I'm going to give you a 1099, it's going to have my company's LLC on there as opposed to me under their W-9, which was the big difference there, right? Because now I can make it all part of my organization. And then also I was contracted by, all of the major carriers in that space, and also held individual contracts with those guys. And with that market, I would really spend time in the Spanish speaking market. I would do events, little things at churches, little things at we have a really large flea market here in Denver. It's called the Mile High Flea Market. So we do some events there. So I kind of built a book of business out of that. And then the other one was rural areas here in Colorado as well. So rural Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas, New Mexico, everything surrounding Colorado is pretty rural and it's pretty untouched. So I would just show up to these areas, or even before I would show up, I would pay some money to run a couple ads through there. I'd do some intended mail campaigns, just some things to kind of get your name in people's faces, which, kind of goes to what I do now. And just kind of develop a brand down there. And once you develop a brand, you can kind of, same thing, you get into that circle of influence, you kind of, those markets were really fun. And then on top of that, every time I was here in Denver, I also had a chance to, go into State Farm agents, book of businesses, individual brokers, book of businesses, and do the same exact thing. So that's kind of how the Colorado life sales situation kind of came about, right? Now all of that stuff kind of came to a halt, maybe around COVID time, maybe a little bit, before COVID time, but it was definitely, people were getting nervous to have you in their house. The Zoom meeting, especially, again, no, just with the Hispanic community there, especially if, migrant was a lot of the people that I would work with. So they weren't the best in terms of having like technology or knowing how this stuff works or even having trust in it, right? So that's where I kind of really took a little bit of a drop off there. And then I actually started selling premium personal training, which was really interesting too. This company that would basically sell to high-level executives, endurance athletes, CEOs.
So you're like, I can sell anything to anybody. I'm gonna completely switch to a completely different buyer.
Correct. Yeah, 1,000. Yeah, at that point, and a lot of it again just had to do with like the mental health stuff as well. Like during that time, I wouldn't say that I really had a recognition of how this, not just role, like this industry and the frequency that you get paid and the highs and lows. I didn't really know how it affected my mental health until I actually stepped away from it, I would say. But at this point I was selling more than life insurance too. It was things like annuities. So there was a period during like 2016, I want to say, 2016. We had like some fiduciary responsibility laws that put a lot of liability on the producer, which was insane. You know what I mean? So there was a lot of late nights where I'm 11 p.m. waiting outside of somebody's home to get back so they can sign a document so they don't, lose the tax penalty from withdrawing their account rather than transferring it. So it just got a little bit too stressful for me.
Wow.
And I think it's a little bit better. And I think that's where my passion for, automation kind of comes in as well. It was stressful, man. If I can help anybody avoid those stressful moments, I would certainly be more than happy to, but yeah, it was, some mental health issues, and I just decided, let me try to sell something else. My brother was actually one of the head trainers at that company, so he actually got me the job selling, online personal training, which was insane.
Oh, during the COVID era.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it sounded insane in 2019, and in 2021, it was like, of course you do that.
Yeah,
The world just radically changed. So and that was a W-2 job.
No, that was still a 1099 job.
More stable.
Yeah, it was more stable for sure. Something like that, I had daily sales rather than like, every couple days, every couple weeks, you get a big sale. So it was definitely more stable, more consistent. Still a little inconsistent, but it wasn't horrible. It was pretty natural with the economy. You kind of feel the ups and downs, and you're pretty aware of them. So from there, weirdly enough, one of the people that I ended up selling to was one of the account executives at EasySend. During that time, I was looking for tech companies to get into, not Insurtech specifically, but I definitely just wanted to get into the tech world, and this was more so just, I have friends that work in cybersecurity, some that work in like review empowerment, so things like that. So I was like, you know what, I think this would be a good next step. So I was already interviewing with a few companies. I had received a couple of offers. I received a small, well, not the offer I was looking for from LinkedIn. Received another offer from Zoom Info, and then shortly after, I was still working. I sold, the product to the account executive that I work with. And he's like, "Hey man," he's like, "I really enjoyed the discovery call. I thought that was extremely thorough. I thought that was honestly like very impressive. So I don't know if you're trying to stay like in this market or if you're looking for something else." And really quickly, I was like, no, I'm looking for something else.
Did he already know that you had an insurance background?
No, he had no idea. He had no idea. So it worked out very, very well, actually. The insurance was a vertical that they just so happened to be working on. And at the time, actually, EasySend really focused, I think, on 7 different verticals, if I'm not mistaken. Where now we kind of really focus on insurance institutions and financial institutions. So yeah, it just kind of worked out that way. But once I saw, hey, they sell to insurance companies, I thought I got the job. You know what I mean? There's no way I don't know.
Actually, no, like very few people know insurance, and I know insurance.
Exactly,
Uh,
exactly. So yeah, that's kind of how I
and
arrived here.
at EasySend, are you somewhat focused on the Spanish speaking market?
Yes. I mean, as far as we extend to LATAM, yes. If there's any sort of like El Robel was it's a company that we currently work with. That was a company that I was along with for the whole journey. You know what I mean? Um, and then yeah, if there's any sort of Spanish speaking prospects, and it's not a market that we're particularly looking at. But I mean, you've been to these conferences before, and there's definitely some prospects that show up that are like, "Hey, we have an organization in Guatemala." So, yeah, so that's definitely where I focus a little bit. But yeah, if there's any sort of intent to get into the LATAM space, or we have any prospects, any SIs, I'm working directly with those guys, definitely, which kind of extends outside of my role, if you can kind of see.
Excellent. Any advice for the the young insurance professional looking to get into Insurtech?
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you wish you had known?
Well, I think what I was grateful to know was how to tell a story, right? With the data that you have. So that goes, it's going to be important once you get into the insurtech space. It's important if you do any type of sales right now, is how to tell a story, is using the data that you have. In my case, it would be my experience, right? How exactly does this pertain to your company? So just learn how to take your information and put a story together that would resonate with the companies that you're trying to work for, essentially. And be persistent, man. I mean, there's usually like 500 different people that apply for account executive or business development roles on LinkedIn. So how are you going to stand out from 500 different people? You know what I mean?
That
A
is,
lot of time, yeah.
especially with the title account executive, account manager. I as a recruiter, I'm working one of those right now. That requires very specific experience in a commercial lines agency. And holy crap, like I wake up every morning to like 100 applications,
Yeah.
99% of which don't have that experience. And yeah, how are you going to differentiate yourself? I got one a couple weeks ago, and he did not have the right experience, but his profile photo is him playing a tiny little guitar, and like, don't include your photo on a resume in the US. That's a good way
Yeah.
to get it.
Yeah.
But anyway, this one had a photo, and it's him playing a little guitar with like a big smile. Like, it's very, very funny. I wanted to call him. And that's his LinkedIn photo also. Even though he didn't have the experience, I wanted to call him just to get to know the guy. Yeah, anything you can do to differentiate yourself while still showing me that you have somewhat the experience that we're looking for. And I'm a third party recruiter. I can't be too creative. If they're paying me, is because they're looking for some experience that's hard to find. If you're applying directly at the specific company, then be even more creative.
Exactly. Be creative, man. Be persistent. Use tools. Use LinkedIn Navigator. I think right now, if you don't have a job, I think they're doing 60 free days
That's awesome.
for somebody that if you're unemployed with LinkedIn Navigator. So just use as many resources as possible to reach out to these people, especially on LinkedIn. If they're posting jobs, you can see the author. And I'm sure as the recruiter, you're just like, shut up, don't say this. But
No.
yeah, man, add the
This is the same
recruiters, reach
advice.
out to them, send them a video,
I give
send them a
people
funny
every time.
picture. Something needs to stick out. But yes, also make sure that the information you're providing to them pertains to them. Because if you're like, hey, I was a rock climbing instructor for 20 years, I want to get into the insurance space, well, that doesn't really help me at all, right?
Now,
But
if something in their LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever indicates that they're into rock climbing, and you have that in your background, of course, freaking mention it, right? Anything you can use to
right,
connect with,
right.
if you went to the same school,
Yeah.
anything you can use to connect with them and separate you from the hundreds of resumes that they get that are completely unrelated.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it's not that a rock climber can't get into the Insurtech space. It's just learning how to tell a story, right? Instead of saying I was a rock climbing instructor, be like, well, I used to instruct a bunch of people who worked in the Insurtech space, and naturally we'd have conversations about this for 10 plus years. You know what I mean? Just be creative.
I'm definitely understanding why you were successful selling life, which is a lot harder to sell than PNC. Absolutely. Be creative and learn to storytell.
Yeah, man, that's the most important thing.
I wonder if storytelling comes natural to those of us from the Latino cultures, uh, because it came pretty easy to me,
Yeah.
and clearly it came pretty easy to you.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean it, not that I know, but it would make sense. You know what I mean?
It
I
kind of
mean
makes sense.
a lot of lessons that are taught to you by your parents, especially early on, tend to be in the form of stories.
No,
You
no,
know?
and now that I think about it, like Nestor Hugo Solari is a great storyteller. Gloria Guntinhos Vance is a great storyteller. Tiago Prado of BRC, who's Brazilian, great storyteller. Uh, I am curious. I'm gonna have to do some research on this. I'm gonna have to look for some anthropological research on storytelling in Latin American cultures. Because I just made the connection, and I do think that it probably makes sense. See, and here you go sending me on a rabbit trail. It's gonna
I
consume
love it, man. I
my
love
life
it.
for the next few weeks. Thank you. This has been super interesting, especially with the background in life. Selling life is so hard. I see so many people drop out of selling life. In fact, the last I read, I'm a PNC guy, but the last I read, the 5-year survival rate for brand new life salespeople is like 6%.
Yeah, man. And here's the
So
thing too. I love that industry. I think it's amazing. I mean, I saw people that had no high school education be successful in this space. I saw people that were immigrants from other countries that could barely speak English be successful in this space. So, I mean, if you happen to be listening and you are struggling with that, I mean, please reach out to me. You know what I mean?
love
I'd be
it, love it.
to
I
help
will
you guys.
when this goes live, I will tag you on LinkedIn and on the show notes. So if you're listening to this on the audio only side, in the show notes, I will include the LinkedIn for Sergi. Sergey, thank you so much for your time. Happy Friday. I can see that the snowboard's behind you. It's May 19th, so I don't think that you're gonna have much powder for a
One
while.
last weekend, man. We got one
Last
last
week of the
weekend and they're
season.
shutting it down. Yep,
Uh,
yep. So make it out there this weekend.
Good for you. Good for you. I'm envious. I did not get well. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. Did not get out to ski at all this year. Used to be a couple hour drive from Lake Tahoe.
Oh man,
Uh,
and you seen the winter they had this year, right?
Heavenly's. Well, yes, I wasn't there this year. They're open till like June this year.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I've never skied in Colorado, so at some point definitely will, and I'll definitely reach out, let you know.
Please, man, please, definitely.
Awesome. Thank you for your time today.
All right, my man.